What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Essential Scares podcast, the only show that dares to ask the question, is it essential? I am your host, Corbin, and with me today, as always, is Bobby.
James Wan is bad. Let's go!
And Alan.
James Wan is amazing.
Thank you. Well, we have got quite an amazing show for you today. We are celebrating our 50th episode and 1 year of the show with a movie from the franchise that started it all for us. Today, we're watching The Conjuring. But before we get into it, Bobby has a spoiler warning.
As always, baby, you know I do. This will serve as your first, one, and only spoiler warning for the movie made by James Wan, The Conjuring. If you do not want The Conjuring spoiled for you, which at this point would be kind of wild if you don't know enough about The Conjuring and you're listening to this podcast, but live your truth. Skip to the time code ahead and our essential spoiler-free discussion. In the words of CJ Grand Theft Auto, aw shit, here we go again. Alan.
You know, Bobby, there are some weeks where it's easier and some weeks where it's harder to follow you up and try to give a synopsis of a film. This is probably the hardest week when you hit me with a fucking CJ from Grand Theft Auto quote for me to try to tell people what the hell this movie is.
San Andreas, baby!
What am I supposed to do with that? Alright, so this movie begins, roughly speaking, with a basic idea of who Ed and Lorraine Warren are. Some old school demonologist experts that are trying to... that are basically just doing exorcisms. It's cool. It's the 70s. Who cares? So, as time goes on, we find our family. They go to this house, and of course, it's haunted with something. There's a problem here. People are getting spooked and scared and all sorts of stuff. Eventually, the parents get so concerned that they hunt down Ed and Lorraine, go to one of their lectures at a college, and then convince them to come actually see their house. And of course, Ed and Lorraine, being very pragmatic, are like, well, there's probably a natural thing occurring here, not an actual supernatural thing. And of course, that's not the case, because if this were just an instance of it can be explained, well, we wouldn't have a movie out of it. So, some bad things start happening, and Lorraine has a few different visions to find out exactly what's going on, and it's pretty boring, all things considered.
Really?
Because not a whole lot. I think
you don't like this one?
Very boring.
Really?
No. We get some conflict. We get some minuscule resolution, and everyone goes away happy. And that's The Conjuring in a nutshell.
It's super weird that the movie that has the most damning evidence was a secret. It was a secret, according to James Wan.
Well,
I'm not, I would in no way, shape, or form allegedly call the Warren family a group of goddamn charlatans, abusing people who are mentally ill to make them think that they're ghosts in the house because of reasons. I would never do that. But, if I were, I would say shame on them and, not good for them. But, the Warren family, what's up with them, huh?
So
I think. Go ahead.
Where are we going with this episode here, Bob?
I have opinions, and they will not be stopped by anybody. I just again, this movie is boring, painfully boring.
So it shocks me that you guys think that, though. Why do you find it so boring?
Okay, so let me tell you.
Honestly,
everything everything, and I will give this movie credit where credit is due. Sound design, this movie fucking owns. This movie is, if you were only ever listening to this movie, you think this movie is fucking terrifying. The music in this movie is made to be scary, and the sound design is really, really good. There's a lot of like whispery shit that like you can barely hear, and but you hear it and it holds with you. The way that they do static imagery, like where even the static on the TV, you catch things in your eye, even though there's really nothing there. It's all really good. Other than that, this movie is boring as shit at best, and at worst is outright like hardcore Catholic propaganda. And as a cafeteria Catholic, I'm not on board with that. Like,
so so if you would agree that you feel like the movie is technically well done in a lot of angles, and yet
like
boring.
Most James Wan's movies, yes.
So
it's very
what
technically
is it?
well done.
What is it that bores you? Because I think that what attracts people to a lot of James Wan movies, but especially to the Conjuring universe, I think that there's two things that people really get into the franchise for. One of them is that it's really mainstream approachable because they've kind of turned Ed and Lorraine Warren into a very like romantic ideal.
They're
kind
Marvel,
of fun.
they're Marvel superheroes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. We talked about that a lot in our very first episode. Go and check it out. But so people like at this point especially are coming to the movies to see the Warrens like together, right?
Sure.
But I think the other thing is that James Wan has kind of captured a more primal fear to a lot of his movies, and I think that that started even with Saw, but I think especially with Conjuring, like the movies are scary almost despite themselves at times, like the audio design, the imagery, like things like that, like that's what gets people scared. I mean, I remember when this came out, like that was the word on the street. The movie's rated R just for that reason. There's not even anything else in it.
Yeah,
It's rated R.
Yeah,
This movie's rated R.
I was so sure that this was a PG-13 movie.
For being too spoopy. And when the MPAA sent the R rating back to Warner Brothers or whoever made this movie, I forget, they were like, really? But we could trim it down, I guess. There's nothing in there. And they were like, there's nothing you could do. It's R. Like, that's okay, I guess.
Shocking to me.
Yeah. Because this movie absolutely does not deserve an R rating.
No.
Like, again, I will say, right, I watched this movie by myself for the most recent time on a phone. I've watched this movie in theaters, and I've also watched this movie on a TV with a surround sound system, which is essentially watching it in theaters again. Right. And I watched this most recently on a phone because whatever. And there was a point in this movie where I watched it while I walked downstairs, and my wife, who had not seen any of the imagery, only the sound, was freaked out. And I was laughing at the movie at this point because goddamn, it was not scary. It was the big exorcism scene, which is probably where the most horrific imagery of the entire film, other than the scene where the big old scary hands come out of the closet and clap.
Like, yeah, but that's a great little gag, though.
It's
I like that
the
a lot.
only bit of the movie that could be remotely considered scary.
I think,
but
and also when she's on the top of the staircase and they do it at the second time, that's a good one. Yeah.
I don't know. This movie bored me a lot, and like having watched this movie. This is the third time I've watched this movie, and it'll be the last if I can avoid it. This movie isn't bad. It's very well shot. As we were talking about before the podcast, I feel like James Wan has an eye for cinematography as well as creating shots that get replicated a lot. He's a very good master behind the camera. Yeah. This movie is not well acted. The guy who plays Ed Warren, what is his name? He's a famous character.
Patrick Wilson.
Patrick Wilson is very much the type of actor who he needs a director.
For sure.
Yeah, and I don't think that this is a movie that is an acting movie. This is a movie that is all shot composition, and it's very boring because of it. Like you can be both. You can be a director and be like, hey, do more or do less here, and like you can do that. But James Wan, I think, is somebody who is, if he didn't have good ideas with bad follow through, he would be a cinematographer.
Yeah,
like
I feel that, and like I mentioned it before we were on air, but I'll say it again. Like I compared James Wan to Zack Snyder, and I stand by that. I think that a lot of his movies feel like a cinematographer directed them first. And it's like, okay, well, like what's gonna look like really dope, but through a horror lens. And watching this movie back, I saw a lot of... I've seen this movie several times. I'm a big James Wan fan. I think if you've listened to the show for a while, you probably know that. But watching this movie this time, this was my first watch post-Malignant. And there's a lot of things in this movie that made me think about Malignant. Like the way that his shot composition was, or like the way that he like lined certain things up. And you even just made me think about it again because you said like, oh, he's not an actor's director. And I think that Malignant is sort of like the turning point of that exact idea of like, well, let's just kind
go
of...
hog in there.
Yeah. It
I
feels
can't direct. I'm here just a cinematog. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So I think that there's an interesting, like, looking at his career over time, and like there's a line you can draw for sure of the things that are not so great about The Conjuring and how we got to Malignant. I think is
I would say, other than Saw 1.
Yeah, well, that's like the outlier. I mean, that's an actual masterpiece.
Well, I also think that he also had what's his name, Wynell,
Leigh Whannell.
Yeah,
Whannell?
Who
Whannell?
Oh, it's Wynell.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I also think
he's very intelligent. He's great. He helped a lot.
I think out of anybody, he had the more directorial when it comes to acting experience, because he acted that movie, right? He was one of the three
one
big
of the
guys
three people
in that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So he had some,
that's true.
even though he made some choices that I would disagree with in Saw, and we'll get to it in the Saw episode. Sooner, probably, rather than later. We probably should start that.
Yeah, I guess so.
Saw is like the one franchise I actually got into when I was a teenager and couldn't handle horror movies.
Saw was the reason I didn't want to watch horror movies for a really long time, actually. And then I did watch it, and I was like, oh man, I was stupid. This movie isn't even that bad. But
this is the first movie he did without him.
Yeah.
So this is like James Wan's like fourth movie. It's the first movie he did without Leigh Whannell.
Yeah. And I would say that it's shows
noticeable.
that this movie is not well acted, despite several of the child actors' performances being pretty good, or I should say child actors. Like they're probably like 16, 17, so they're good enough at this point to be cast in every single one of their high school's performances.
Yep.
But like, I don't know. This movie bothers me in a big way because I was told so often that these movies are so scary and the Conjuring movies are so good by people who really like horror, and this movie is just not good. It's just not for me. I don't know what to tell you.
So I don't know that saying not good is the way I would phrase it. I think I agree with you on the boring aspect of it. And I think the reason I think it's boring is it feels like there's no payoff here. Like, as someone, it's pretty well known. I like a good gore scene, and there's nothing for you in this movie.
I'm not looking for gore in this movie.
I know, but
you're
what
not
I'm
going to go
saying
into
that would be
an
more of a
exorcism movie
payoff.
looking for gore, though.
It would be more of a payoff in a movie where you have demonic possession as a key theme, of someone to get just eviscerated or just something. The best we get in this whole movie is like a face change and blood is spit out. Like there's this movie is the epitome of blue.
So it
doesn't do anything. It just stops and that's it.
I think
it's just boring. There's no payoff.
I obviously, everybody is entitled to their opinion, but as someone who has seen a lot of possession movies, one of my favorite subgenres, what I'll say is you're looking for the wrong thing. That is not something you're going to get out of this subgenre basically ever. from the best to the worst of this genre, that is not something that happens. And so, like, I think this, I think it's important to keep that, like, it's all
there's,
like
nothing in it in this movie.
Okay, wait, but I want to challenge this in a different way.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you, Corbin.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for gore in a possession movie. I'm just not. Even though the most famous The Exorcist is a possession movie with a decent amount of gore, right?
Yeah.
Like gore in possession movies are not super prevalent. You're looking more so for the religious uncomfortability, right?
Sure.
But I'm gonna challenge this in a different way.
Either.
That's the point I'm actually gonna challenge. Is this movie is so decidedly on the Warren side of this, despite feigning several times like this, like what is it? What sort of like this like fucking like oh this movie there's reason for doubt, but this movie does like it leads you so there to, and I find that incredibly frustrating. It's like this movie pretends like it's playing both sides. This could be one way or the other, but it's absolutely not, and that is incredibly frustrating to me.
Yeah,
because it lets you feel smart for buying into whatever the fuck the Warrens are saying. Like it is so cheap in that way, and that's what
they
bothers
do that.
me.
You know, they do that by showing other instances of possession or hauntings or whatever where they go and there isn't anything.
Yeah.
And I think that they probably could have legitimized this haunting a little bit actually by following even just closer to the real story,
which they
didn't.
didn't.
Right. And yes, 90% of this movie's adaptation is for the sake of the art of the movie, I'll say. But even in like real life, right? Yeah, you like that phrasing. Even in real life, you know, like if you believe either side, this is like over the course of a decade, right? And I think that there's room there for the Warrens to maybe like come in and out and like debunk things, and then it can turn out to be like real, something where you can kind of go like, okay, yeah, it's not actually anything. And I've seen other possession movies where it does turn out to be a false possession, and sometimes those are the best ones. And one of my favorite possession movies of all time is a false possession movie, and I don't want to say it because it's like a big twist, but
we'll talk after.
Yeah, there's room. I think there's room for that, to have that, and it still be a good movie. In the genre, is my point.
Like, that's my issue with the Conjuring franchise of films as a whole. Is like
the Conjuring universe.
Yeah, they are so on board with making it concrete. Yeah. And that is so much more boring to me, because if you've ever, I'm somebody who, despite all of it, underneath it all, I'm a true believer in a lot of this shit.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
and as a true believer, like, you get frustrated because none of this is that concrete. It requires, dare I say it, faith to kind of on board to jump into these things, and to make it this obvious when it's not is super frustrating to me, because it's like it makes me doubt my own convictions more, because I go like, oh no, yeah, the Warrens were charlatans because they like, and they're not as like upstanding and a true American Captain America if we want to make this a Marvel movie, which this movie is so hard trying to be. Right, and the franchise is trying to be the whole.
I think they got there by the third one.
Absolutely, they did. But there is just this whole idea of like the Warrens are these good, upstanding American citizens, which is like, nah. Like, Ed Warren would have been like, was a fat old motherfucker by the time that this is happening, and got his ass beat a shit ton if this was real. There's no way he was.
They were kicked out of this. The parent case. They went there like twice over the course of 2 or 3 years, and they were forcibly removed every time. Like, this was not.
No, yeah, they were not the good guys in this. They were not helping anybody, and it's super frustrating. I like that's
and you know, we talked about this a lot actually on our last Conjuring episode, but I quite enjoy the version of the Warrens that are in the Conjuring movies. but they're not like
No.
they're not representative of the Warrens.
No,
Like
they're bad. The Warrens were bad people. I want to be clear on that. Like, you want to like Sam, you want to like them at like the movie versions, but they are bad people in real life. Yeah. And that's what bothers me. I think you and I are on two ends of a spectrum that either side is understandable. I'd rather like the fictional version where they're not fictional people. They're real people. And like liking them for what they pretended to do versus what they actually did is not good to me.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
like
and that's
both
the same
are
issue
valid.
for sure.
Yeah.
We talked about that a lot, and like it is a problem with all based on a true story events. You know, any movie or any, you know, TV series, whatever, that's based on a true story, like when you twist the reality, it makes it a little bit tough sometimes, because you have to come to grips with like separating, you know, the version of somebody, the fictional version of a person, with the real version of a person. And that can be harder when it is a real person, you know. Yeah.
I've got a question.
I have an answer.
So, generally speaking, Bobby and I are a little more on the negative side, and Corbin, you're more positive on this film.
Sure.
So what I want
I'd agree.
is, Corbin, I want you to give us something you really didn't like about the film, and Bobby and I are going to say something we actually enjoy about the film, just to kind of get that dichotomy.
So
you go first.
I don't think that the movie is boring, but I do think that there is a section where it meanders a little when they have the diversion with the Warrens going back to their house and the daughter is having issues.
Oh my god, it's
like,
so stupid!
What is the point of this sequence?
All of the daughter subplot is fucking stupid.
When they do the dishes,
sequence,
because it starts with them doing the dishes and the car, and it's like, fuck off, fuck
that
you.
Whole sequence is clearly a setup for the expanded universe. That's an MCU bit. It doesn't belong here, but it sets up the next movie. And I, as a fan of all 9 of these films, let me tell you, that sequence, it is the worst part of the movie, because it so obviously doesn't belong and is just there to get you going for the next one. That part I did not like, and it's kind of long. It's like 8 minutes. Like I would have just trimmed that
it's
out.
longer than that. It's like
Is
a
it?
15. Yeah, if you take,
I couldn't tell if it was it like long and it feels long, or is it?
You take the moment. You take the moment where Bathsheba grabs the amulet or whatever after that's all done. That's like a 15-20 minutes. That's like a good chunk of this movie.
So cutting that would make this movie go from hour 50 to a clean hour and a half, and I'm there.
That's a 90-minute movie. Yeah, for sure.
Do not need that.
It's so stupid.
This movie was a bit long in the tooth. That's so I had a 4.5-hour drive today to watch this film, and I forgot how long this movie was, and I felt it.
They're all really
instance.
Long. Yeah.
I do not want us to recover the Devil Might Be Doing It Again, because that's the worst out of the 3 by a long shot, and none of these movies are good.
I think it's the worst out of the 9.
I've not watched The Nun, and I have not watched any of the Annabelle movies, and you know what? Until this podcast makes me, I'm not gonna.
Same.
Well, The Nun 2 isn't far off.
1 and 2, so.
But what I will say, what I like about this movie, and I've mentioned it before, is I really do think that the audio design of this movie is very, very good. There's a lot of little subtle whispery bits that make you a little bit on edge. As frustrating as it is, this movie really does cement modern horror movie soundtracks, where 80 Cents was saying off-key piano became a thing because of this movie.
Yep.
If I had to make a guess, it would come from here. So like, there's a lot of really good, just loud awfulness that works here. Mm-hmm. I think that this movie, for what it's worth, really is here, despite it being bad. It is really, really important. Maybe that's a spoiler, but it's really important for the movie soundtracks as it's moved on.
For me, it's a kind of similar approach to you, Bobby, where I think sound is very important, and I think that's highlighted the most in like the found footage sequence that we get as they go down into the basement and they start like, because and the reason I say that is they're using the audio from the mic that Ed is holding as he's like going around in the basement, and like when other people are talking, it's a lot more muffled and sounds farther away. Like that whole sequence is a there are a few moments here where it's like, oh, they've got something here. That sequence is it's kind of a classic horror sequence when you watch it, because it understands how to draw you in, and it just keeps going, and it keeps going, and you think you're going to get a payoff, you think you're going to get a payoff, you think you're going to, and then finally they get you with the door slamming, and everyone's like, what the fuck just happened? Like, it takes its time, which is interesting in a movie that's too long as it is, when they get the idea of taking your time right in the middle of the movie. But that whole sequence is probably my favorite bit, because it actually had me going, what is, even though I'd already seen the movie, it draws you in and makes you go, what is going to happen here? And I think that is a very strong feeling to get out of a movie you've already seen, when you're like questioning, oh, is something bad going to happen, even though you know nothing bad is going to happen because you've already seen it. Like that very strong section there in the middle of the film.
This movie is not without merit. I want to say that this movie does have some really cool cinematography. I just want to get that out of the way before I challenge another thing about this movie, and I need you to fight me on this. Okay. Why does the cop character exist other than to make you think you're stupid for not buying into the Warrens' bullshit?
Oh, he is the most unnecessary side character, right? Like, I don't know if he's ever introduced by name. He just kind of comes by, brings a shotgun to an exorcism, and...
It came in handy.
Well, it almost killed them.
It came in handy, Corbin.
Yeah. They opened the door with a shotgun.
It did not. It did not.
They could have kicked that door.
No. My whole point is like, his whole shtick is like, I don't buy it, and
he's the non-believer, and then he believes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this whole movie does that though, because the parents, and I don't know the reality of the parents' religious ideals, but in this movie, the parents are basically non-believers, right?
Yeah.
They are
they never got around to it.
Yeah, they never got around to it. Unbaptized, non-churchgoers, agnostic, I think, is the idea that we get from this movie.
Yeah.
Which I think has its own issues when it comes to possession. I've never been one to fully buy in on someone who doesn't even believe being possessed. Like, I don't think that is... If you think about, the war of a soul, is that really a valid target? Not so sure about that sense. One, right? Yeah. Doesn't make sense, but...
If you don't buy into the soul, how could you... Right? The power of belief is what's important, right?
And like every other exorcism movie, every other possession movie, the person being possessed is always strong of faith. And that's what makes it scarier, right? Because that, like... The idea that you can be shaken even if you have the strongest... Yeah, and like the target audience is usually someone who's at least medium of faith, right?
Well,
and so like it makes it more real.
If you buy into the idea of an exorcism, right? Yeah. Which, frankly, to a certain extent, I do. Right. For sure. It requires you to believe in the existence of good and evil. And if you're agnostic, right, you believe, or even atheist or even anti-theist, you believe in moral systems that are created through humans' evolved prefrontal cortex, but nothing other than that. If you believe in that there is a divine moral system that exists, that would put you in the idea of good versus evil versus societal right versus societal wrong, right?
Right.
Or my moral system versus your moral system. So there is an objective good versus an objective bad. If you're somebody who doesn't buy into that, then like there isn't a right answer. Yeah. Like,
along with that,
a little fuzzy on that one.
Yeah.
The other thing that just kind of like rubbed me the wrong way
is a very dark thing, but yeah, go for it.
like 15 minutes before the mom character is like revealed as the possessed, even though we kind of already knew that with the puking thing, Lorraine goes, "It's the mother," and then she says the same fucking line like 15 minutes later. She's like, "It's the mother when she took her kids." It's like, what?
Yeah.
That to me is the most like, this is a movie feeling I had while watching it. They just had to have some sort of an excuse for the mom to take the 2 girls away to murder them. Because it's like, if you know, let's think.
If we make this movie 2 hours,
this.
then this movie will be legitimate.
But like, think through it for 4 seconds. If we know that the previous people who've been here were mothers that caused their children to die, why in the fuck would you leave the mom alone with the kids? You wouldn't. You wouldn't do that. So, like, it doesn't make any sense.
So
it's
let me.
It's the most.
You
it's a
want to know
movie
what this
feeling
is?
I had while watching it. It was awful.
You want to know what this is? I'm talking over you, and that's okay. But it's happening. This is bad podcast etiquette, but we're here for it. This is very much like, hey, dummy, you know that thing that you were thinking all along? That's the twist. Wow, you're so smart. Wow, good for you. So smart.
And that is a James Wan trademark. Ever since he left Saw. In Saw 1, he had a twist that was a twist of twists, a real story that went somewhere. And after that, he's kind of had those like little ones, right, with Insidious and with the Conjuring franchise over time,
and even later Saw movies.
Right.
Later Saw movies got a little out there, but
his fan base as a whole, and I guess I'm probably delegitimizing myself a little bit, is pretty mainstream, right? And so like they dive all the way in on that, and make it like a lot of movies are like that, and these are like the horror equivalent of like kind of holding your hand through a mystery, like, oh yeah, see, you got it, bud. Yeah,
wow,
right.
Look how smart you are, huh?
Yeah. Super Weenie Hut Juniors, but horror. That's what this is. It's so approachable that like I think these movies are too approachable. Like I think they make that critical mistake where your total normie can watch this film and be like, oh my god, that's the most terrifying thing in the world. But then in that same theater, you can have someone else go, that was kind of dumb. Like I feel like it goes too far into the make it approachable camp that it loses itself along the way. Like it doesn't really keep enough integrity to kind of like really have the gumption to be a good horror flick. And that's
the gumption.
We're late, but we should give this movie, because we've been talking a lot of vibes about this movie, we should give a whole an actual synopsis of this, right? A spoiler version of this, right? So what we find is a family comes into a haunted house that is in fact haunted. There's 5 daughters and the Warren family, who are these great holier than thou, only not Catholic priest demonologists, come in and go, oh shit, this is real, after going into houses that it is not real. And then they try to fight it, only to find out that the mom has been possessed by a demon who was a witch named Bathsheba. And Bathsheba,
who's a real person with a real name, by the way.
Yep. Was a real human being who probably wasn't actually a witch.
Weird. But was accused of witchcraft.
Yes. After the husband, no doubt, murdered her. If you actually look at the historical evidence.
Well, it was Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
No, that's just how.
No, you're thinking of Tetruba, who was a different lady. Bathsheba was a woman who was connected tangentially in hindsight to Mary Warren, who is also a character in The Crucible. Yeah. Bathsheba was probably murdered by her husband, if you actually look into it. It's a whole thing. But she gets possessed to kill people, and it's a whole thing because in 100 acres of land, people have killed each other a couple times over the course of thousands of years or hundreds of years at least.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, and the Warrens made a connection, and therefore there was a possession that allegedly took place and was allegedly exercised by Ed Warren and his wife Lorraine.
Yep.
And that's what this movie's about.
And that actually is one of the biggest what was the phrase that I used? I'm forgetting already. The art of the movie or whatever. Sequences, the entire exorcism. A lot of the movie can be extrapolated from the story, the books that the parents wrote, and the book that Lorraine Warren wrote. You can kind of put together most of the movie using those scraps with a little bit of the normal, based on a true story, the normal biopic extrapolations. And then the movie goes like full superhero at the end with the exorcism, which is the part that absolutely did not happen.
No.
Yeah. It's certainly not in the way that it is presented. That's just
this
simply
movie
not
is
how
quote unquote
exorcisms
based
work,
on a true story.
Yeah.
I mean, any movie you
And
see that says that, you can go,
it is
all right.
technically, right?
There are some movies that are based on a true story that are surprisingly accurate.
Always nice to see those. Nice to see those.
But the majority
not
of
a
movies
lot
are
of
gonna
horror
cover on
movies,
this,
especially horror. Yeah, horror movies that are based on a true story. Oh, they are always very far from the truth. Almost always.
Because the murders are typically not something you actually want to see, and the stuff that you see is typically post-death murder. Like,
oh yeah, I remember. I think the original Texas Chainsaw said it's based on a true story on it.
Yeah,
kind
which
of
is based
true,
loosely on Ed Gein. Yeah, very loosely on Ed Gein.
Yeah.
So something I wish this movie would have done. Do you guys remember a while ago we watched what was it, Lake something or other?
Lake Mungo.
Lake Mungo.
Yeah,
Do you
Lake
remember?
Mungo.
Lake
Wow.
Mungo
Remember
is very
What
good.
a
I like
great
Lake-
movie.
Yeah, Lake
One of the
Mungo,
best movies
better
we
movie
watched
than
for this
this.
show. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mild spoil, kind of major
Spoilers
spoiler
for Lake
for
Mungo.
Lake Mungo.
yeah. You watched the
Skip,
episode.
skip ahead. Skip ahead 2 minutes if you don't want Lake Mungo spoiled for you.
Pause the movie. Pause the episode.
Go
and listen
watch
to our
it.
Lake
Go watch
Mungo
Lake
episode.
Mungo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big thing there is all the scares are within that film. All of the background things are there the whole time. And this movie misses out on taking advantage of something like that.
And there's
that's
a couple of shots where they clearly could have.
Exactly.
They clearly could have.
If it was
that to
real, the footage would exist, and they should have shown it because they do in the sequels.
Yes.
That's
They take
that to me
advantage
is-
of that in the next ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They clearly, because like they even show like later in the film where Lorraine is like, "I saw the spirits around you," and it's like, then why the fuck didn't you show me that?
Show
at the
me
time?
pickies, boy. Exactly. Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you have,
absolutely.
well, but like the film, like it doesn't know how it. At the same time,
And then they do
it'll
like the
those
flashback,
things.
and they're like, "Look, it was there the whole time." And it's like,
Yeah.
I could never have figured that out. You didn't show me the first time.
But like the one time where they do it well is when like she's talking to Ed and out by the tree, and she just is like staring up, and you're like, well, why is her face like that? And then it turns to her looking at Ed, and you see the body hanging there. It's like,
Because
okay,
she's a clairvoyant, dude.
okay,
Duh.
no, but it's that works as like a scare factor there, like, oh, she's
Yeah,
seeing
that
something that
sequence
others
works.
aren't.
Yeah.
And they have the opportunity to do that and like actually make you earn it, where you go, wait a minute, that was something there.
You know
I
where that
know it
you know
was.
that worked?
But they don't do it, and it's just such a missed
Are
opportunity.
you
Corbin,
gonna say?
the other James Wan movie. Where did
I
that
was-
work, Corbin?
I was gonna say, they do this in the Saw franchise all the time, and it works.
Not even just Saw. What's the other one with Sam
Insidious?
Wilson? Yeah, Insidious.
Oh,
where they have
yeah, they do
it wor-
exactly the
it-
same
like,
shtick. Yeah,
it does
is
not
Oh, you
better.
mean
work
the
here.
classic shot where it turns back to him after he's telling the story, and it's just half his face, half demon, and you jump out of your skin?
No. It's
They
it's
do
her
the same,
it's
like,
her telling the
flashback
story, and
sequences.
she's freaked out because there's the Darth Maul demon.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's a good idea because that movie is not based on a true story, so you don't hold it to a higher level of scrutiny.
So
And
a
they
question
really go
then
for
for you
it
guys.
on that one. Yeah.
Do you think that this whole franchise, as fantasized as it is, Do you think it would be better for this franchise if they basically just went, we're using the template of Ed and Lorraine, but making our own entire thing? Just using them as like their inspiration, but then going, okay, we're going to make something entirely different. Do you think?
No. I think that you couldn't. I think that we have seen movies based on the case files of Ed and Lorraine Warren for 50 years. And there's a reason why the Conjuring universe works and those other ones didn't as much. And I think that having the Warrens in there as characters is necessary, for better and for worse.
I agree. I think that if you like, the best thing that they could have done in this movie is left it up to interpretation in a more honest way, where like it's scary and shit that like they could prove happened because probably shit that was haunted happened in that house. If it's like one of the bigger stories, the same with the Annabelle story is like, is Annabelle real? Probably not, but you know, there is a little bit to be like, holy fuck, that's scary. And just make that happen, and like, don't make it obvious, right? Have it be how it really is, where things happen outside of it and you see the outside bit, and then somebody goes, what the fuck is that? And like, it's the last second of it. That would have been scary for us. Like, but like, that's the best way you can do this movie. Anything other than that is very much giving credence to people who probably don't need the credence. Like,
and I do think
allegedly.
True.
Yeah.
I do think that the franchise improves a little as it goes on. Like, the franchise is kind of on a curve, and there's definitely a few movies there in the middle that are actually quite good and definitely scarier than this one.
Which ones?
I think The Conjuring 2 is the best of those three, for starters.
I would agree with that. Although I also have issues with The Conjuring 2.
Sure, and that's more than fair. But out of the three, the second Conjuring, probably the second, I think, Annabelle.
Okay.
Annabelle. I think the third Annabelle was the one with the Warrens, which was definitely the weak spot of that franchise.
Hey,
and I quite enjoyed the Nun. Not great, but I liked it.
Speaking of weak spots of this franchise.
Oh, yeah.
You guys want to rate this bad boy?
Let's
you know something?
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah. Let's
How do we do that?
Bobby, how do we rate movies?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So we've rated these movies for 50 plus weeks on 1 through 5 with half points allowed. So a 1.5, exceptionally valid. A 1.25, eat my butt, loser. It's out of here. We get the score, and that's only to say we're going to start with what I'm going to assume will be the highest score, Corbin.
Yeah. I would be shocked to all hell if either of you gave a higher score than this. I quite enjoyed this movie. I didn't have a lot negative to say about it. I think that we kind of walked around a couple of negative topics, which I think are more about the franchise as a whole and sort of the morality of it all. But despite all of that, I love this franchise and I really like this movie. I don't think it's the best of the franchise, but it's certainly not the worst. I would happily watch it again. And I think that it's still scary despite certain things. I think that it has a lot of spooky moments. I think that it manages to hold its tension pretty well. I love the cinematography and the music and everything that Bobby has mentioned earlier. And with all of that, I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 5. Big fan. Like it a lot. I think it's quite good. Yeah.
This movie's going to get the gambit.
Oh, yeah. And I know that, but
I'm going to go with Ellen next.
Okay.
So this movie has its parts that are pretty well done.
4 out of 5. I'm sorry. We need to sit for
I'm
a
okay
second.
with you interrupting here because I don't even know how to fucking bring my thoughts together.
4
after a
out
4.
of 5.
Well, I mean, I just can't. After watching, I've seen this movie many times, and I just rewatched it, and I do not think that there are enough things about it that I think are legitimately bad that I would drop the score further than that.
You did not
Personally.
defend this movie enough during the spoiler cast for a 4 out of 5, my dude.
Every time I did. Every time his stuff came up, I gave it. I defended it.
That was not defense. That was a tacit like I get it, but also
I was expecting.
Yeah, I get it, but also.
I was like thinking.
I was
okay,
like
Corbin is
3.
somewhere
I was
between-
expecting a 3.
Yes,
I was expecting
like
a 3.
on the high side, he's gonna go 3.5, and even then, I would be like, I don't know about that, buddy.
It's only half score more than that. There you go.
But like the connotation of a 3.5 versus a 4 are two very different things.
That's true.
To me, this movie is sitting on the edge of being completely mediocre and slightly under average. And this is, we've had those moments before where it's like, well, if we did do those like stupid like 0.25 scores, that's kind of where I would land with this. So I think I'm going to actually land at a 2. Because I'm kind of rounding down on this one. And a big reason I'm rounding down is there's just not a lot of payoff here. Or at least payoff that I want. And that's what's frustrating for me. Is you get this movie, there's demonic possession, there's creep factor, you know, it's there, but it just doesn't. It tries to build tension and then never really releases it, except for there's a few moments where it does it well, but it doesn't do it well in the very end, and that's kind of what is sticking with me, is when it's trying to release that tension in the end sequence, I'm not there. It doesn't pull me in enough with the exorcism scene. I think it doesn't get me across the finish line, you know? It doesn't get there. So, I'm at a 2.
I think that's a fair score also.
I'm actually gonna say that Alan convinced me. I was gonna put myself at a 2.5 because I would really put myself at 2.25. But I am so bored by this movie, and I don't think it deserves the full half-point raise, that it is a 2 out of 5. It's a Bobby 2. As we all know, the Bobby 2s are the worst score that you could possibly receive.
That's a brutal spot to be in for
It's
this
a bad
film.
spot. It's a bad
It's
spot.
not actually
where...
the worst, because a 1 and a 0.5 are still our worse.
It's true. A Bobby 1.5 is essentially a 5, but a Bobby 1 or a 0.5 is not a good place to be. But a Bobby 2 is this is a movie that was technically good, but bad. Like it's just not. It is like I said throughout the entire spoiler, it's painfully boring at best and really horrible propaganda at worst. Like it's just not good. It's just not good. And I gave the Maniac Cop movie. I gave Maniac Cop a good score.
That is
So
true.
that-
You gave that a
that-
pretty high score.
So that
Hey man, that's its own special breed of horror, okay?
I don't know. I don't. We talked about it a lot. I don't.
I'm
I could watch.
shocked at
I
a
could watch
4.
it. I could watch it again tonight. I could
The
watch
Maniac-
it again
this?
right now.
You could watch this again.
Yeah.
This is so bad.
Why
I
would you
could
do
watch
that to yourself?
There's a lot.
I
of
like
movies
it a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot of movies that I rate. This might be, this as well as Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. I do not like these movies.
Do we
at
remember
all.
what we gave The Conjuring 3? Because
I think I gave The
was pretty
Conjuring
bad.
3 a 2.5. In hindsight,
Oh, I've got it. I've got it
a 2.
here. You and I both gave it a 2.5. Looking
I
back
get it.
on it, Alan, you gave it a 2 out of 5.
Alan was right.
I'm nothing if not consistent.
Alan was right.
I don't think Alan is not okay. If this was a 2, Conjuring 3 surely is lower than that. Conjuring 3 is so much worse than this movie.
Probably
No,
not.
no. I
Yeah.
think they're pretty consistently bad.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because The Conjuring 3 is because this movie waffles. That's the problem I have with this movie is it waffles. The Conjuring 3 is consistently its own thing.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I that's fair.
Like is it probably a worse movie? Yeah, but it's consistently a worse movie. This movie tries to be good a couple times where it fails. Like,
Okay.
for me.
Yeah. Well, there we go.
So those would both be twos. We're
Okay.
correcting I'm correcting my score.
By the half point.
Yeah.
If there's any super fan out there that's listening through and keeping a spreadsheet of our scores,
yeah, but
Bobby's
also
marking an
but
asterisk.
also I'm gonna make an additional correction. What is it? The Purge, the Forever Purge is a 1 and also non-essential. I'm making that correction now today. while we're making corrections.
In fairness, when you marked that, I think you marked that essential under the guise that in the future we would be able to say, yes, this movie mattered. A year later, this movie did not matter.
Not even close. No one gives a shit about the Forever Purge.
I'm doing it now. I'm correcting it now.
It's good that you're correcting the record.
But hey, other than the spoiler stuff, we do decide whether or not this movie is essential to horror as a whole.
That's right.
So I will
spoiler
start.
Free.
Yeah, it's spoiler free, and I'll start.
A recap on the scores for anybody that skipped ahead. Alan and Bobby both gave this movie a 2 out of 5, and I gave this movie a 4 out of 5. Bobby wants to go first.
I will.
He will go first.
I do think, in spite of itself, that this movie is essential. This is one of the big movies, and I do think it has shaped modern horror, at least sound design. This movie is very bad other than that, but the sound design of this movie is very, very good. From the soundtrack to the sounds. I like that's it's very well done, and I can't fight that. It is it is an essential movie in that regard. I don't want it to be. It's bad. I don't like it, and and other people will tell me I'm wrong, and I'll tell you what, they're wrong. It's a bad movie. You probably shouldn't watch it. But if you ever are curious, like, man, why does everybody do these off-key pianos? It comes from here. And so there you go. Like, that's a thing. So there you go. Yeah, I'm running away from it. I don't even like it already, but it's an essential movie.
So I'll go next because I want Alan to go last because I hope that he's taking this time to build up a proper statement.
I've got something. I've got to say, I'll wax poetically.
I hope you do.
I love that for us.
And but I'm also going to put Alan in the safest position, which is that, Alan, I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, this movie is essential. I think that regardless of quality, this movie is essential for reasons that Bobby mentioned. I mean, I actually wouldn't really add anything else. I think that this movie is sort of like the archetype of possession movies of that period of time. There was this period of time from like 2009 for like a decade where that was a really hot subgenre, and The Conjuring is kind of everything good and also a lot of what's bad about that modern period of possession horror. And if I were to pick like one movie to just go like, oh yeah, what were exorcism movies like in the 2010s, like just watch the first Conjuring. Like that's what it was like, that's what they were like. And movies that came before it, The Conjuring amalgamated that and made it took all the good parts, and movies after that took the good parts from The Conjuring and extrapolated on that. So I think for that reason it is essential. It's a touchstone, a touch point in horror.
In music, we use different keys to align sound into something that is pleasant. It's good to the ear. If you've ever played Tetris Effect, for example, one of the reasons that game is amazing is every time you put a new piece, the sound of you putting the piece is in the same key as the overarching music that is occurring within it. So it's so satisfying to just have these good connections that occur. This movie is C major. It's so common. It's so exactly what you expect it to be. It's the 4-chord song. And unfortunately, that means it is essential. Because it's just so...
No!
You know I'm right, though!
I already said it was. You were the chosen one, Alan.
Oh,
But then
even
you're
with
correct,
the build-up,
Bobby.
I was waiting for Alan to say, and because of that, it's unessential.
No,
He still have to
unfortunately,
write
it is. Like, it's such a good example of the approachability aspect of horror in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And as much as I want to be the contrarian asshole, I can't be, because that's just wrong. On the other token, the budget for this movie was $20 million, and they made $319 million.
So mission successful.
Dollars talk. That's pretty goddamn essential in the money aspect too.
Speaking of uncomfortable opinions, where can we find you guys? What have you guys been up to lately?
You can find me anywhere at Corbangarang. I was on vacation last week, so I really haven't done a whole lot. I decided to restart the book 1,000 Suns. I mentioned that on a week or two ago. I was listening to it, but I didn't like the narrator. I just started over on Kindle. I'm just going to read it. So I'm doing that, and I am spending the rest of my free time between Destiny, a new season just started, and Warhammer. That is about it. Oh, though, I've also been watching Obi-Wan Kenobi. Started last week.
I haven't watched it. I'm so sorry. I need to.
No spoilies. You gotta watch it. 2 episodes are out already.
Yeah.
And it is just incredible. It's
time.
everything you need it to be. You gotta watch it.
Damn. I'm gonna jump off of that. I've also been watching Obi Kenobi. It's very good. You should watch it. We're big Star Wars fans here. Outside of horror and Destiny and Warhammer, we're big sci-fi people. Just generally, it seems. Other than that, I did the thing. I started reading the second Horus Heresy book. It's very good. I'm not super far into it, but I'm into it enough to be like, yeah, I like this. I've been struggling with Destiny. If you've been watching me at twitch.tv/theredweenie, which you should follow me on, could be cool. I've been streaming there sparingly. Something's wrong with my Destiny right now, and it's exclusive to Destiny because other games are running fine. So if you have any issues that, hey, you can join us on the Discord, the Essential Scares Discord. Be like, hey, Bobby, this is your problem. Would love that for us. I'm a relevant social there. Other than that, things are going good. I had a Memorial Day party with my family. So I've been really enjoying the fruits of that labor today. But yeah. And what about you?
You can find me at A Seal Punter just about anywhere. I've recently been playing Salt and Sacrifice, the sequel to Salt and Sanctuary. It's like
that's not made
Dark
by
Souls.
From Software.
It's a Souls-like, you know. It fills that gap.
It's 2D, right? That's the size.
2D,
the 2D
yes.
one.
If there's one like big downside I would say about the game is it has a tendency to eat your inputs. And it's never good because you're like, I hit the fucking button here. I hit circle to dodge and then nothing happened. That's a little frustrating. It's just.
So you playing this on PS5? You play all your Souls likes on PS5 now?
Look, man, platinum trophies are a son of a bitch. Okay, you get one.
I was trying to get you onto the achievement train for 15 years, and now he finally is the platinum trophies.
Man, give me a trophy for actually finishing the list, and it does wonders.
Icky caca.
The Xbox has needed it for literally years.
I do not care about anything. I just want to play the game until I'm done with it.
That's fine. You do you, bud. There's a metagame, though, and it's so fun. I've still been listening to the same book, Blinding Knife by Brent Weeks. It's been fun. I'm still just kind of working my way through it. I did not listen to it as much as I wanted to in the past 8 hours of car experience that I had going out to St. Louis this past weekend. But I will probably, by the next time we record, I'll be either done with or close to done with that book. And I'll be on to the third one.
Well, there you go. You can find the podcast anywhere at Essential Scares. We are active on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we would love to chat. All of our other socials are linked on our link tree in our bio on any of there. So whatever your preferred platform is, find us wherever. Our link tree also has a link to our Discord. Bobby mentioned it earlier. He's looking for some tech advice. We're also open to discussing other video games, other movies, books, music, whatever you're interested in. Sports, yeah. I mean, we have a lot of interests outside of horror, and we'd love to chat about them. Next week, we are going to be starting a new theme, a quickie, kinda, for the month of June. We're going to catch up on some new releases that we've been, just missing out on. Some movies that have come out that we didn't get to, and some movies that are coming out in June, which turns out to be quite a month for horror. So our very first one that we're going to do is X. That came out in March, I believe. We missed it, so we are watching it now. I'm super excited. It looks awesome, so I hope it's as good as I've heard. We have a spare slot on the calendar for fan suggestions. So we're keeping this rolling forward. If you have a suggestion for us that has come out in the last 12 months that we haven't covered yet, we'd love to hear it, and we'd love to add it to the calendar. But with that, wraps us up for the week. Thank you to everybody for watching and listening. We really appreciate the support over the last year. This is our 50th episode. I kind of can't believe that we got here. It's super cool. And can't wait to get to episode 100, right, guys? Thank you.
Super excited.
That's right. Thank you to Alan and Bobby for being here with me for the last year. I have been your host, Corbin, and this has been Essential Scares.
Play that 50th goddamn breakdown, baby.